I admire your live and let live as regarding individuals, but as for the churches, I assume we can all agree that there are certain corrosive practices, such as homophobia, church abuse by priests, and mixing of church and state. Here's another for you to consider. I'd be curious to hear your comment on this. And the corrosive issue is faith versus reason. Even our liberal friends who believe in gay rights, they don't believe in creationism, they still may believe that faith is to be glorified over reason. What do you think about that?
Well, I hope it's clear that I can't agree that faith should be glorified over reason, and it seems a rather extraordinary attitude. But I think it's the example of education, the example of intellectual and artistic people who basically are keen to pursue a life of open inquiry. If that is not example enough, there's nothing one can do. You can't take faith away from people, and it's not our business to start some sort of inquisition of reason in which you have to prove that reason. I know you'd like one. I know you want to be the Torquemada of the New Enlightenment, but yeah, I mean, of course, and as I say, it's not even. I don't think personally. I don't think it's even our job to mock. I don't think it's our job to mock those with faith. I don't think that becomes us. I really don't. I think it's incredibly important when it comes to education that we don't cede equivalency to faith-based dogmas and doctrines over empirically demonstrable, repeatable, genuine learning and theories, and indeed, pictures and constructs of the universe such as we have, incomplete as they may be. They are beautiful and they are testable. And those, I think it is absolutely essential we cling on to an education system which privileges reason over faith in that respect. Absolutely.
Just an announcement for the rest of the line. We're only get to 3 or 4 people, and we ask you to keep your questions brief for time purposes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Stephen, I absolutely loved and rejoiced your performance as Oscar Wilde in the 1997 film. And my question was, as someone who has espoused the intellectual way of life, and for the longest period of time, you were devout in eschewing the world of sensuality and physical intimacy. Did enacting all those intimate scenes with Jude Law provide a chink in the armor?
Jude is a fantastic kisser, and I'm happy to say I've just completed a picture with Jude just a few weeks ago. Slightly less sensual in its scenes. I played Mycroft Holmes, the brother of Sherlock Holmes, in a sequel to a Sherlock Holmes movie that Guy Ritchie's directed, with RDJ, as we call him, playing Sherlock, and myself as his smarter brother, and Jude as Dr. Watson. So it was a very good reunion. But yes, yeah, it's quite something. I suppose the real thrill for me, and this is almost a spiritual numinous thrill, was to be walking along a path at Magdalen, Oxford, with Jude, wearing clothes that were exactly based on a photograph taken in exactly that place, with exactly those trees and exactly those buildings that Wilde and Bosie walked along. There's something very extraordinary about that. I remember hearing Richard Burton talking about the fact that he wore the actual rings that belonged to Wagner when he played Wagner. And there is something rather splendid about that. Anyway, thank you for the question.
Hi, Stephen. Like you, I'm a great admirer of Oscar Wilde, not only because of his wit and his intelligence, but because he was so tremendously and effusively kind. And that is something I think that we as humanists can really take away from his life and his work, because too often the interactions between us and the non-secular world is characterized as a fight, as you touched on in your speech and in your responses. It's us versus them. We're smart, we're educated, they're ignorant. How do we, well, I think this is very detrimental to what our work is about. So how do we invite an open discourse and encourage others and invite them to think critically and for themselves while remaining compassionate, patient, and humble?
It's a very good question, and I think that, I mean, there are times when it is right to be angry, a right to be angry at injustice, right to be angry at, at harm done to knowledge and to understanding. But it is important to remember that, that if there is arrogance, it is in those who claim to know how the world was made and those who claim to know, rather than those who strive to find out. I think the point about kindness is very well made. There are two human qualities that often get sort of lost in the fight for justice and virtue and reason and so on, and they are cheerfulness and kindness. They're two immensely. Cheerfulness lights up rooms, it energizes, it delights. It's such a. It's in a sense perhaps a subset of kindness. It's such a kind thing to be cheerful. Somebody once said that there are two kinds of great wit. There's the kind you sit down at a table with who makes you feel this high because you feel so inadequate next to them. You feel so small. And there's the kind who brings you up to their height because they make you see the world through their eyes. As they said of Falstaff at the beginning of Henry V at his funeral, not just a wit, but a cause of wit in others. And Wilde was like that. They said that even Lord Alfred, Robbie Ross said, even Lord Alfred was funny because Wilde showed him how to be funny. He changed the colors of things. He made you see how things really were. He always used to say to waiters, and he said it not in order to be witty, but just to make them look. It's an obvious point. They'd say, would you like red wine or white wine? He said, bring me yellow wine. And you look at it, it is yellow. Enjoy its yellowness. See things in the colors they really are in. And that's what Oscar gave. And I think that's, if that's what he could teach us, it is to bring others up. It's to educate. And education is the most important thing we can all have. It allows us to, it allows us to have the confidence to make mistakes, to see things, and to encourage and inspire others. I think.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is that terribly upsetting for the others behind?
It's very
Yes, we're getting towards
on something in your talk that I found very personally resonant and important, and I just thought that perhaps you could expand on it a little bit because it does so contribute to your worldview. What is your favorite type of cheese?
It's a really good question. Well, there are Edam, as you probably know, is made backwards, which is a very unusual thing for a cheese. That's sorry, that's the verbal skittishness in me. It is quite literally made backwards. Do you see? Yes, thank you. There used to be a British stand-up comedian who would end. You'd have to know this cheese exists, of course, so it's probably going to fall very flat, except there are a few Welsh or British people in the audience. He'd say to everybody, drive like a Welsh cheese, carefully. Yes, there is a type of cheese called carefully, you see. No, the fact is, while we're on the subject of cheese, it's a bit like wine, and it's a bit like love. There are things in the world that are not necessary for survival. And it is one of the paradoxes of being alive that it is only the extras that make you want to keep on living. We don't really embrace the world because there is water and warmth. They are the necessities without which we cannot live. But actually, what we can't live without are the extras. Wine and cheese. Stilton is my favorite cheese, if you really must know. There you are. Pleasure. So, thank you all very much.